He came from Lebanon and took the world by storm with a flawless physique and a story that goes way beyond the stage. Through highs and lows, he built a legacy that still inspires generations. But what exactly turned this champion into a true legend? Today, you'll find out this story isn't just about muscle. It's about courage, resilience, and the power of never giving up. So grab your pre-workout and join us as we dive into the journey of a true lion. Get ready. The roar is about to begin. Beirut, 1955. In the middle of a politically unstable Middle East, Samir Bannout was born, a young Lebanese kid with something different in his eyes. While most boys his age were busy with school or playing soccer, he got hooked on something few people around him even understood: the art of sculpting your own body. Captivated by bodybuilding magazines that somehow ended up in his hands, Samir didn't just see strength in those chiseled physiques. He saw a symbol of transformation. It was during his teenage years that passion turned into action. At just 16, he had his first real encounter with weight training. Encouraged by his cousin, a powerlifting champ, Samir decided to test his limits. And test them he did, trying to lift 330 pounds, 150 kilograms, right off the bat. The result? A nasty injury that left him unable to walk for a week. But instead of scaring him off, it only fired him up. From that moment on, there was no turning back. Bodybuilding had officially entered his life, and it was there to stay. Even without proper equipment, Samir found a way to train. He used rusty bars, makeshift weights, and cracked mirrors to track his progress. Every rep wasn't just about building muscle. It was about chasing the dream of a kid who believed he could rise beyond the borders of his country. He wasn't just lifting iron, he was lifting hope. He wanted to make history. And for that, he was willing to pay the price, day after day, workout after workout. His family support was minimal, but that didn't shake him. In a culture where bodybuilding wasn't respected, Samir faced plenty of judgment. But he already understood one key truth: when you choose an uncommon path, criticism comes with the territory. What he really wanted was to prove, first and foremost to himself, that he had what it takes to be the best. Every ache, every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, they were all part of the mission. And soon enough, the results started to show. His body was developing fast, and after just a few years of serious training, he was already catching people's eyes at local gyms. His symmetry, proportions, and muscle definition were progressing faster than anyone expected. It wasn't just genetics, it was hunger. Samir had found his purpose, and his body was now showing it loud and clear. That early success sparked something bigger. If there were limits, he wanted to break them. It didn't matter that he was born in a country with no real tradition in the sport. He believed talent plus hard work could take him where few had ever gone. That unshakable faith in himself became the fuel behind one of the biggest decisions of his life: leaving Lebanon and going after his place among the best in the world. Ever had a dream that fell out of reach just because of where you came from or the hand you were dealt? Samir's story is a powerful reminder that where you start doesn't define where you can go. When he realized there was no room for his talent to truly grow in Lebanon, Samir made a bold move. He left it all behind and took a shot at life in the United States. The land of opportunity was also the beating heart of the bodybuilding world, with legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu dominating both the magazines and the stage. If Samir wanted to compete with the best, he had to train and live where they did. First stop, Detroit, Michigan. But Detroit was far from the golden dream he had imagined. To survive, Samir took a job at a Ford factory, working long, grueling shifts on the assembly line. His schedule barely allowed time for proper training or consistent diet. Even so, he didn't complain. He kept his eyes on the prize, focused on finding a way to chase the dream he'd carried since he was a teenager. Everything changed when he crossed paths with Joe Weider, the legendary entrepreneur known as the father of modern bodybuilding. Joe saw more than just physical potential in Samir. He saw charisma and discipline, the magic combo that turns an athlete into a star. The offer was clear: write columns and articles for Weider's magazines, and in return, get the support needed to move to California. For Samir, it was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. With the same courage that led him to leave his homeland, Samir and his girlfriend packed up and moved to Santa Monica, California. Now, he was in the heart of it all. Iconic gyms like Gold's Gym, bodybuilding giants training side by side, and new opportunities popping up around every corner. It was like stepping out of black and white into full color. The dream was finally coming to life. Joe Weider kept every single promise. He gave Samir the spotlight, opened doors behind the scenes, and personally guided him through several key moments. Their relationship was built on trust and mutual respect. For Samir, having the support of such a powerful figure was proof he was on the right path. Now, besides talent and drive, he finally had the resources and connections he'd been chasing for years. With access to top-tier training facilities, seasoned professionals, and constant exposure in major fitness magazines, Samir was entering the most promising phase of his career. The international stage was getting closer by the day, and he knew he couldn't afford to waste the opportunity. That kid from Lebanon was now training alongside legends and determined to become one himself. With a solid foundation and laser-sharp focus, Samir began making waves in the amateur circuit. His balanced physique, paired with relentless determination, brought impressive results. Between 1974 and 1979, he established himself as one of the top rising stars, earning top placements at contests like Mr. Universe and Mr. International. Each competition brought not just trophies, but growing respect in the bodybuilding world. The true turning point came in 1979 when he won the World Amateur Championships in the light heavyweight category. That victory was a game changer. It finally earned him his long-awaited IFBB Pro card. A whole new chapter was starting. He was now officially on the same level as the big names he used to admire, ready to compete on the most prestigious stages in the world. But Samir knew turning pro was just the beginning. Staying at the top would be the real test. His pro debut was a trial by fire. In 1980, Samir stepped onto the Mr. Olympia stage for the first time, the biggest show in bodybuilding. Despite all his hard work, he finished in 15th place. For some, that would have been a crushing blow. But not for him. Samir saw it as a learning experience, a chance to observe, grow, and come back stronger. He knew the Olympia wasn't just any stage. Being there at all was already a big deal. And it showed. His progress was undeniable. He was gaining valuable experience through shows like the Grand Prix and Night of Champions, going head-to-head with legends and fine-tuning every detail of his physique. With each show, he got a better grasp of the pro bodybuilding game, from how judges scored symmetry and muscular density to how stage presence could make or break you. It was also a time of deep self-discovery. Samir started studying his own body, experimenting with diets, training tweaks, and water manipulation. He learned how his metabolism worked, what made his physique pop, and which strategies played to his strengths. That level of maturity, combined with growing stage experience, started to show. His physique became more polished, more complete, and it didn't go unnoticed by judges or fans. Unlike many who look for quick fixes, Samir knew real success took time. He didn't just want to compete. He wanted to leave a legacy. He wasn't aiming to be just another good athlete. He wanted to be unforgettable. And that mindset carried him into the 1980s with a clear goal: reach the absolute top of the bodybuilding world. Ever had a moment where your first try didn't go how you hoped, but you kept going anyway? Samir is living proof that a rough start doesn't dictate how the story ends. After years of grinding, learning, and evolving, Samir Bannout was finally becoming a serious threat to the world's top bodybuilders. By 1982, his progress was undeniable. He placed fourth at the Mr. Olympia, showing off a polished, stage-ready physique. The Lebanese lion was no longer just a rising star. He was a real contender for the crown. People backstage already felt it. The next season could be historic, and it was. In 1983, Samir walked into the Olympia with confidence, strategy, and a physique that was nothing short of perfect. His presentation had everything a champion dreams of: classic proportions, balanced mass, razor-sharp definition, and commanding stage presence. He went up against elite competitors like Frank Zane, the king of aesthetics, Lee Haney, a future icon, and Mohamed Makawai, known for his insane conditioning. And he beat them all. Samir's victory was iconic for several reasons. First, because he broke the cycle of American and European dominance on the Olympia podium. Second, because he proved that you could win with aesthetics, not just brute size. And third, because his win sent a powerful message to the world. A guy from Lebanon, a country with zero bodybuilding tradition, could rise to the very top of the sport's highest mountain. The media nicknamed him the Cedar of Lebanon, a nod to both his heritage and the incredible detail in his back, especially that legendary Christmas tree of lower back striations. Samir was the first to showcase that level of detail so clearly, something that would later become a trademark for champions like Dorian Yates. He had raised the bar and left his mark. The recognition was instant. Samir was on the covers of Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Iron Man, and just about every major bodybuilding publication. His workouts, his diet, and his prep philosophy became the subject of study and imitation around the globe. The Lion of Lebanon had finally earned the respect he'd been chasing since those early days training with rusty weights and cracked mirrors. But beyond titles and fame, that 1983 win meant something deeper. It was the fulfillment of a dream. Samir had proven that with effort and belief, even the most unlikely goal can become reality. He didn't just win, he inspired. He showed the world that bodybuilding is a global sport, and greatness can come from anywhere. Can you imagine what must have been going through Samir's mind on that stage when they called his name as Mr. Olympia? The kid from Beirut had just reached the top of the world. And in that moment, every ounce of pain, every sacrifice, every hard day had been worth it. His crowning moment in 1983 felt like the start of a long reign. But to everyone's surprise, Samir Bannout's path started to get rocky just 1 year later. In 1984, he came back to the Olympia ready to defend his title. His prep was intense, his physique was still elite, and most expected him to place among the top again. But the result shocked everyone. Samir placed only 6th. For fans and experts, it felt like a robbery. His conditioning, definition, and proportions were clearly better than several guys who placed ahead of him. But bodybuilding, as many know, isn't judged on muscles alone. Behind-the-scenes politics, relationships, and hidden agendas often play a big role. And Samir was starting to feel that weight. Rumors began swirling of conflicts with organizers and that he had rubbed some powerful people the wrong way. Later that same year, he competed in other shows like the World Grand Prix and the Canada Pro Cup, but the results stayed below expectations. Frustration was setting in. He was an Olympia champion, yet he wasn't being treated like one. His blunt attitude and strong personality may have also contributed to his growing isolation in a world where diplomacy often speaks louder than muscle. In 1985, looking for a fresh path, Samir competed in the WABA, a rival federation to the IFBB. And once again, he proved his class by winning the World Championship. It was a reminder that his physique was still world-class. But that choice came at a high price. Because he competed outside the IFBB without permission, Samir was hit with a 3-year suspension from the Sports Top Federation. That punishment was a major blow to his career. The suspension meant more than just missing Olympia. It meant losing visibility, sponsors, and momentum. While other athletes kept stacking titles and gaining media attention, Samir was forced to watch from the sidelines. And as every competitor knows, in bodybuilding, 3 years off the stage can feel like a lifetime. That period away from competition ended up marking the end of his peak competitive run. By the time he returned in 1988, the sport had evolved. Standards had shifted. New names had taken over the spotlight. Samir wasn't the same, and neither was the world he was trying to re-enter. That glow from the 1983 Olympia was fading fast under the harsh light of reality. Have you ever felt like you were pushed aside, even though you were doing everything right? Like the doors started closing for reasons totally out of your control? Samir's story during this chapter is a powerful reminder that talent isn't always enough. And sadly, in this sport, Many outcomes are decided long before anyone steps on stage. After 3 years away from the main stage, Samir Bannout finally returned to competition in 1988. But the scene had changed. The stages were tougher, the judging standards had evolved, and the new athletes were bringing physiques that were bigger, denser, and more extreme. Samir, once celebrated for his aesthetics and symmetry, now had to stand toe-to-toe with mass monsters ushering in a new era of bodybuilding. And that wasn't going to be easy. Trying to adapt, he bulked up to 225 pounds, 102 kilograms, during prep. But as the show approached, he made a last-minute call to cut down drastically to 200 pounds, 91 kilograms, aiming for sharper definition. The result, however, backfired. He ended up looking flat and less dense, missing the visual impact needed to impress the judges. That strategy misstep seriously hurt his comeback performance. Between 1988 and 1994, Samir competed in dozens of shows, hoping to reclaim his former glory. He appeared at the Arnold Classic, various Grand Prix events, and, of course, the Mr. Olympia. But the results were disappointing. His only real win during that period was the 1990 Pittsburgh Pro Invitational. Beyond that, he racked up average placements and watched his global ranking slowly slip away. With each show, Samir felt his body responding less and less. Years of brutal training, strict diets, sodium manipulation, and extreme routines were taking their toll. He couldn't recover the same way anymore. The volume, the detail, the crispness that had made him king in 1983, it was fading. His body was clearly worn down, and his confidence started to fade along with it. But it wasn't just his body. The judging was getting to him too. Samir began to feel like he wasn't being scored fairly. He believed that, even when he brought a strong physique, the judges consistently undervalued his performance. When I deserved third, I got fifth. When I deserved second, I ended up in fourth, he once vented. That constant feeling of being overlooked only added to his frustration and wore down his passion. Still, he kept fighting. Maybe out of pride, maybe out of hope that he could turn things around. Samir kept getting back on stage, even as his body showed signs of running on empty. His Olympia placements started dropping year after year. 8th, 9th, 16th, and just like that, the 1983 champion quietly faded from the front lines of sport. As time went on, the signs that something was off became more obvious. Samir wasn't just an aging athlete anymore. He was battling serious health issues that directly affected his performance. High blood pressure, which had haunted him for years, became a constant hurdle. On top of that, his tendency to retain water made it nearly impossible to achieve the dry, shredded look required at the pro level. To fight back, Samir started using aggressive sodium and water-cutting techniques. He'd eliminate salt from his diet weeks before a show in a desperate attempt to dry out. But the extreme approach often backfired. The hormonal imbalance caused by these methods would lead to bloating, loss of sharpness, and poor performance. It was a dangerous game, and his body was beginning to crash. On top of that, his obsession with high-volume training often pushed him into overtraining territory. Samir was known for his intensity, for going all out every session, but what worked at 25 no longer made sense at 40. Training without proper rest, paired with inconsistent eating and poor sleep, crushed his recovery. The result? Muscle loss, chronic fatigue, nagging injuries, and a weak response to training. To make matters worse, Samir struggled with eating. His appetite had always been low, and he often trained on an empty stomach or with barely any food in him. That meant his body lacked the fuel it needed to rebuild. No energy, no protein, no hydration. It was a downward spiral of constant wear and tear. His physique no longer reflected the fire still burning inside. And yet he kept pushing. Like every true champion, he struggled to accept that change was needed. For years, he stuck to the same methods, believing that just pushing harder would bring back the results. But his body was sending louder and louder signals. It was time to stop, or at least rethink everything. The same body that once set a gold standard was now begging for mercy. Little by little, Samir began to realize it wasn't just about willpower anymore. What he needed was intelligence, balance, and respect for his own body. The same discipline that once took him to the top now had to be used to slow things down. The Lion of Lebanon was wounded, but there was still time to heal. Not as a competitor anymore, but as a man. There comes a moment when even the greatest champions have to reinvent themselves. For Samir Bannout, that turning point came when he finally understood that intensity isn't measured by volume, but by quality. After years of grinding through endless workouts, unbalanced diets, and minimal recovery, he realized he was burning out not just his body, but his mind. It was time for a new approach, and that's exactly what he did. The first big shift came with his diet. Samir stopped training on an empty stomach and gave up the habit of eating sporadically. He started eating 5 solid meals a day on a set schedule with full focus on nutrient quality. He added fiber, digestive enzymes, and prioritized foods with high bioavailability. The results came fast. More energy, better digestion, and a metabolism that finally started working with him, not against him. His relationship with macronutrients also evolved. Samir learned how to balance protein, carbs, and healthy fats. Where his old approach was all about cutting everything to get ultra lean, now the goal was to build a body that was functional, aesthetic, and above all, healthy. He started actually listening to his body and adjusting his diet based on his training phase, moving away from autopilot and into strategic nutrition. His training saw an even more radical transformation. Instead of endless, punishing sessions, he focused on short, targeted workouts with controlled intensity. Every rep was intentional, precise technique, full mind-muscle connection. He let go of the urge to kill it every day and started giving real value to rest between sessions. That deeper connection between mind and muscle, something he always believed in, now became his greatest strength. Another game changer was sleep and recovery. Samir finally accepted that no amount of training or clean eating would work if the body didn't get time to rebuild. He prioritized quality sleep, respected rest days, and adopted tools to support recovery, like stretching and smart supplementation. The result? Fewer injuries, less burnout, and a stronger, more balanced physique. This new level of awareness didn't just change his body, it shifted his entire mindset. Samir began to see bodybuilding as a long game, where every choice and adjustment impacts the big picture. He stopped being a slave to his ego and started becoming the master of his body. The maturity the sport demands, he now applied with wisdom and balance. After decades of dedication, sweat, and setbacks, Samir Bannout decided it was time to close the competitive chapter. In 1996, he stepped on stage for the last time at the Masters Olympia, finishing in a respectable 6th place. It was the end of an era, but not the end of his relationship with bodybuilding. For many athletes, retirement means walking away completely, but Samir took a different route. He simply changed roles. Off the competitive stage, he found new ways to contribute to the sport he loved. He became a coach, sharing his knowledge with up-and-coming and pro athletes alike. His journey, full of both triumphs and hard lessons, made him a valuable mentor. People didn't just seek him out for training tips, but for the wisdom he'd built over the years. He also dove into the fitness business world. Samir launched his own line of equipment, supplements, and training strategies, all with his signature touch. But one of the coolest ventures? His restaurant in California. It became a casual hangout spot for bodybuilders, friends, and even his idol and longtime buddy Arnold Schwarzenegger. There, over food and stories, the past came back to life. His legacy as an athlete was also officially recognized. Samir was inducted into the IFBB Hall of Fame, the highest honor for those who left their mark on bodybuilding history. It was the final stamp of validation. The Lion of Lebanon had carved a legacy that would never be forgotten. Not just for winning the Olympia, but for representing resilience, precision, and a true passion for the lifestyle. On the international stage, he also became a major influence in the growth of bodybuilding in the Middle East. His journey inspired young athletes across the Arab world to believe that success was possible, no matter where you came from. Samir became a symbol of perseverance, invited to speak at events, give interviews, and lead seminars across the Arab world and beyond. Even though he stepped away from the stage decades ago, Samir Bannout never stopped roaring. His presence is still strong in the bodybuilding world, not through flexed biceps under bright lights, but through sharp words, spot-on analysis, and an unshakable passion for the sport. He's a regular at major events, seminars, and live streams, where he breaks down athletes, judging, and trends with the authority of someone who's lived it all from the inside. One of the most remarkable things about Samir today is how close he is to the new generation. Unlike many who become bitter critics of the modern era, Samir chose to be a bridge, connecting the past with the present. He acknowledges the sport's evolution, but always reminds people of what truly matters: technique, proportion, aesthetics, and respect for your body. His takes are balanced, grounded in decades of experience, and respected by athletes and fans alike. But his impact goes beyond words. Samir opened doors. Back in the 80s, a champion from Lebanon was unheard of. Today, hundreds of Middle Eastern athletes compete in the world's top leagues, and many of them point to Samir as a direct inspiration. He helped plant the seed of bodybuilding in regions where most people hadn't even heard of it. And that's a kind of victory no trophy can fully represent. More than just muscle, Samir shaped stories. Through his journey, he proved that you can fall, rise again, adapt, grow, and keep giving back, even after the stage lights go out. His voice still echoes in gyms, interviews, podcasts, and across social media, where he shares tips, reflections, and behind-the-scenes stories with a level of honesty that's rare these days. Growing older in the sport isn't easy, but Samir shows there's value and beauty in every phase. He's not trying to compete with his past. He honors it. He doesn't want to be who he once was, but instead uses everything he lived through to make the present richer. That's what makes him more than just a former Mr. Olympia. It makes him a true ambassador of physical culture. Have you ever thought about how you'd like to be remembered? Samir Bannout will always be the Lion of Lebanon, not just for what he achieved on stage, but for the way he keeps roaring off of it, with conviction, with passion, and with a legacy that only grows stronger over time. Samir Bannout wasn't just a champion. He became a symbol. His story goes far beyond stages, trophies, or magazine covers. It's the story of someone who dared to dream big, even when he came from a place where no one believed in bodybuilding. It's the journey of a young man from Lebanon who faced setbacks, started over, and dealt with rejection, but never lost the will to win. That alone makes him unforgettable. Over the decades, Samir proved that talent is just the starting point. What holds up a champion is character. It's the courage to leave your home country to chase a dream. It's the resilience to push through defeat. It's the humility to admit your mistakes and the strength to start again, even when your body no longer responds the way it used to. He taught us that true greatness isn't about never falling. It's about never quitting. In a sport where many get lost chasing vanity, Samir chose a different path. He chased balance. Balance between body and mind, between tradition and innovation, between the past and the present. His mindset evolved right along with his physique, and maybe that's his greatest legacy: the awareness that bodybuilding isn't just about building muscle. It's a lifelong lesson in discipline, growth, and self-mastery. His example lives on in every athlete fighting for recognition, in every kid training in silence, with little equipment but a whole lot of heart. Samir represents that quiet hope that yes, it's possible, that the spotlight isn't where the journey begins, but what you earn through daily discipline, sacrifice, and faith in the process. More than titles, Samir left a message. He showed that limitations can be overcome, that criticism may hurt, but can't stop you, that falling is part of the path, but it doesn't have to be the end of it. He's living proof that bodybuilding can transform, not just the body, but the soul. Today, even far from the stage, the Lion of Lebanon still roars in every word, every seminar, every piece of advice he shares with the next generation. His voice echoes as a reminder that a true champion is someone who inspires, someone who leaves the path open for others to follow. And in that, Samir remains undefeated. So, what did you think of the Lion of Lebanon's journey? If his story inspired you even a little, hit that like button to show you value hard work, resilience, and a legacy of real champions. And if you want to support us even more, consider becoming a channel member. You'll help us grow and unlock exclusive perks too. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss stories that go way beyond the stage. And hey, drop a comment below. What part of Samir's journey hit you the hardest? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're in the mood for more, check out the video in the card or the link in the description. There's another legend waiting for you there. See you in the next one.